What's going on, guys? Today we're going to be doing a knife sharpening demo here. We've had a few people request a video on how to sharpen a knife. Now, what you're going to need is either you can get a few different types. I've got a Bear Norton combination stone. Now they get a rough gritty side here, rubbing off them real hard burrs, rough edges on your knives. And you've got the polished smooth side here to get a nice finishing touch on the blade. Now, one of the most important things, if you've got a stone that you have been using, is it needs to be clean. You need to have a clean stone. The way of doing this is using boiling water, put it in a sink or something, or a tub, some sort of tub. And you need to tip that boiling water over the stone. That removes any bits of fat and grease, anything that comes out of your knives while you're sharpening. So that'll remove all that and get a better surface on the stone. Now we've got a few different knives here. Just our normal boning knife, normal 6-inch boner. This one's been worn down a little bit after a fair bit of use. This one is sort of in between a steak knife and a boning knife. I use that more for dicing, any sort of smaller job there where you sort of need a little bit more coverage over your blade, but you don't want anything too big to handle. This is what I'd run. And of course our steak knife. And now I run Victor and Ox, as many of you know. It's my favourite sort of blade to use. But I'm going to show you how to sharpen each one of those with a couple of different techniques. I've got a couple of different techniques there, whichever one you prefer to use. But thousands of ways of doing it. I'm just going to show you a couple that I use to keep a nice edge on my blade. So first off, we'll start with the coarse side here, the coarse side of the stone. Now my knives don't really have any rough edges or burrs or chips out of the blade at all, but I'm just going to show you this just for an idea. If you've got any kitchen knives or anything at home that have a few chips out of them, aren't up the best. Even if you're into your fishing and you've got a few fishing knives that aren't really up to standard and they're chipped and a bit rough on the edge, I'll show you how to get them burrs out and how sharp we can sort of get these things. Now, unfortunately, one thing you've got to remember when you're sharpening knives is it's really not a hard job. I've seen a lot of videos on YouTube that overcomplicate things, and they really make these videos go for too long. It's not that hard. You just need a lot of patience. The technique is easy. It's just time. It's time consuming. It's not the funnest job in the world, but unfortunately, if you want to sharpen knives, you need to put time in. That's the biggest key to this. So I'll go ahead and show you the first method here. Now, if you've got a combination stone, I don't mind using a bit of detergent. Now, you don't want much, otherwise you clog the stone up, but just a little bit, just so it runs smoothly over your edge and you're not sort of it's not working too hard to get over that rough surface. So you don't want to overdo it, just enough to make it that little bit more, that you get a bit more glide there in your blade. Now, the higher you hold your blade, you're going to wear that blade down too much. You know, too much of a shoulder, as they say, on your blade. I like to sort of keep it, now it's going to be a little bit hard to see from the camera, but not flat, but just raise that little bit just so you're getting a little edge there on your knife. This eliminates getting too big of a shoulder. You're going to have more blade to work with. It's going to be easier to maintain. If you're up like that, you're just going to be rounding that edge off and rounding it over until you've got just about no blade left. You're not going to have a sharp knife running an edge like that on a 45-degree angle. I prefer to keep it sort of half flat, just so you've got a little bit of clearance under your back of your knife, just enough till you get a nice edge, a nice flat blade. So the first technique is pretty easy. You can both hands, don't matter. As long as you're keeping a nice consistent run there with your knife, you're not pressing too hard down on that coarse side. It does take the edge away very easily. This just eliminates any rough burrs on your knife. You keep count of how many times you're running over one side. I like to do 20 a side. or thereabouts. Now the only thing to remember using this technique, you need to be flat. You need to have your whole knife touching the stone. It's no good applying too much pressure on your heel of your knife and you're only hitting one part of your knife shaft at a time. You need to have like a lot of focus and making sure that all the knife is getting the stone and you're not just on a little bit of an angle and the tip isn't finding the stone. Like, it all needs to make contact there with the stone, which isn't hard. You just got to pay attention, make sure you're going the whole distance of your stone, get every bit of your blade to make contact with it. And you go back the other side. Now if your knives are reasonably sharp still, like these aren't very blunt at the moment. They're not going to take a long time on this coarse side, just to rub off any sort of burrs we can't see. Now, once you've given it a bit of a touch up on your coarse side, it's time to finish up on the polished side. Once again, just a little bit of detergent, not much. And you're going to repeat this process on the smooth side. You can press a little bit harder on the smooth side, it's not going to take too much off your blade. It's more just to polish off that rough edge. You'll notice if you sharpen a knife just on the coarse side of your stone, you'll go to slice some meat or whatever you're cutting and you'll notice that it'll really grip to whatever you're cutting. It'll feel like it really bites in. But if you rub it over this smooth side for a finish, it'll have a nice even cut, nice even glide through whatever you're slicing. It's not going to have them sort of rough edges that's going to grab as such on whatever you're slicing, but it's always good to finish up on your smooth side of your stone. Once again, the stone I'm running is a Bear Norton. I think they're about $100. It might not be too much more to buy one. They're reasonably cheap as far as sharpening stones go. But like I said, there's 1,000 ways to do it. You just sort of got to find which method as such you're comfortable with. I'm just showing you how I do mine. Now another method I was shown from another butcher, we call it the samurai method. Now this is purely because of the action you sort of take while gliding your knife through. Now this is a little bit more of a difficult one, this is why I don't really use it as much, but the fellow that showed me this had some incredibly sharp knives, so I know it works. It is a very hard method to learn, but if you nail it, you will have some absolute machetes and knives. Like they can turn out so sharp using this method. It's an over and under sort of technique with your hands. Get your knife where it needs to be. You don't want to be too far up once again. Give a nice even edge. Now your tip starts at this corner of your stone and needs to finish over here. Making sure your fingers aren't on the blade, it won't pinch onto the stone. And you repeat that method, you keep count how many swipes you're going. Once again, this can make your knives extremely sharp if you get it right. Same back the other way. An over and under sort of technique. You will, this knife is getting pretty sharp now. We've rubbed it over on a couple of methods there. could have done a little bit more on the tip. The tip's not the sharpest, but the rest of the knife here is pretty damn sharp. But in my opinion, the best method to run is I like just running straight up with a single hand. I believe it's a little bit easier to keep that nice even swipe with your knife. You know where your blade needs to be. Takes a little less practice. This one, it's a pretty simple, straightforward sharpening technique. Now, that's enough of the boning knife here. I'm going to show you with a slightly bigger knife. These can be a little bit harder, just because you've got a lot more blade. You need a lot more drift as such when you're coming through. You can't sort of be too quick with these. You need to make sure you're getting a nice even swipe the whole way through your stone there. Yeah, this won't really need to hit the rough side. It's got no chips or burrs in this blade at all. As you can see, it's pretty sharp. It's got no rough edges. It's a pretty clean blade. It doesn't get used for boning, so you're not going to chip the blade at all. This is what I purely use just for dicing. So it doesn't see a hell of a lot of tough cutting. We're just going to give this one a bit of a touch up while we're here. Same back the other way. Here I have a bit of paper and just a standard kitchen steel. This isn't fancy equipment at all. I'm just trying to show you that you don't need $100 equipment to get a sharp knife. It's really not, as long as you know what you're doing. Now this is always good to, after you've rubbed your knife on a stone, you want to sort of straighten that edge up, make sure you're getting any sort of last burr or chip out of your edge. This just really keeps your edge straight. And once again, you got to keep the same angle either side. You don't want to run it on a rougher angle that side and then run straight this side. Otherwise, it's really going to defeat the purpose. It's not going to sharpen your knife at all. This is just to maintain the edge. And another thing to keep in mind: always use the same angle on your stone as your steel. So if you stone your blade at that angle as I've shown, don't come to the steel and try a different angle. It needs to be pretty well similar. You need to be running that blade as even as you can. Once again, this does not really sharpen your knife, it's just straightening that edge out. Maximising how long your knives can sort of last. Every few cuts you make, whether you're filleting fish or you're butchering, any sort of few cuts you make, it's always good just to have one of these handy just to keep rubbing it over and maintaining that sharp edge. Now, I don't really have any meat to do a demo on, but I figured paper is probably the best next thing for demonstrating a sharp edge. So there you go, there's a couple of different methods on how to use a combination stone. Now, if you have any other questions, leave them in the comments. Any feedback, I'm always open for feedback. Obviously, I'm not the oldest butcher around, so any sort of feedback helps me out as well. I'm learning, always room for improvement. So if you're an older butcher and you've done the trade before, I'd like to hear some feedback. That'd be great. Thanks for watching.